Hello, I'm Joel Peckham. Welcome to the Bone Music virtual reading series. Tonight we are incredibly lucky to have with us the writers Pieter Lefferts and Dean Gessey. Bone Music virtual reading series actually started because of UnCollected Press. We're incredibly fortunate to have them as an affiliation. This happened way back. I wanted to promote a book about a year ago, not way back, but a year ago, that I had coming out with UnCollected Press called Much. Henry Stanton did an excellent job with that, and he has a terrific press. And people should check out the Raw Art Review and UnCollected Press to get a sense of the kind of work that they do. Tonight we have two UnCollected Press authors in Pieter and Dean. I'm going to be a little bit backed off from this tonight because we have the very fortunate situation of having now a social media coordinator in Rajan Staunton, who will be introducing our two authors. Rajan is a former student of mine, an excellent poet in his own right. So I'm going to hand the microphone, the virtual microphone, over to Rajan now, so that he can have an opportunity to introduce our two writers. Take it away, Rajan.
Thank you, Joel. So first up is Dean Gessey. Dean Gessey is an author and poet who has won dozens of international awards and prizes. Among other honors in poetry, Dean was included in the 64 Best Poets of 2018 and 2019 by Black Mountain Press in North Carolina. He also won the Aesthetica Creative Writing Poetry Award in England, the Unaligned Poetry Contest in Finland, and the Creators of Justice Literary Award from the International Human Rights Art Festival in New York. Elsewhere, Dean has won the Frank O'Hara Poetry Prize in Massachusetts, the Inzagam Poetry Contest in California, the Ageless Authors Poetry Contest in Texas, the Spoon River Review Editors Prize in Illinois, the Allingham Arts Festival Poetry Contest in Ireland, the Southern Shakespeare Company Sonnet Contest in Florida, and the COP26 International Poetry Competition in Scotland. Dean's short story collection, Anthropocene, won an Islands Book Award in Greece and the UnCollected Press Prize in Maryland. His forthcoming collection from UnCollected Press is a poetry collection called Goat Song. Without further ado, Dean Gessey.
Thank you, Rajan. Hi, everyone. It's an honor and a pleasure to share some of my work with you tonight. I will be reading from my forthcoming collection of poetry called Goat Song. Before beginning, I would like to thank Henry Staunton, publisher at UnCollected Press, for this opportunity. And in particular, my heartfelt thanks to Joel Peckham, Special Projects Editor with UnCollected Press. My reading includes 7 poems. The first, at more than 7 minutes, twice as long as any other. It is titled Dear Sick Poetry Contest Judges. Dear is spelled D-E-E-R, sick in parentheses S-I-C. So without further ado, Dear Sick Poetry Contest Judges. One witness shy of a DUI, you strike the buck in the clear day of a nursery rhyme moon and douse its wounds with Pabst Blue Ribbon beer as you might a dumpster fire. We see its lungs empty in autumn air, some kind of cuneiform language vaped into darkness, or a chat restriction, or a death knell in outer space. Its legs twitch and strain like a single player version of Twister and come to rest like pickup sticks for a game of extraction from context. The deer's brindled hide fails at echolocation, becomes saran wrap over bloody chum, or the memory of that first drum in Mesopotamia, the prototype for phishing scams, looking to cheat the gods with fake invoices. You too want to cheat the gods with handshakes no more likely to hold than slip knots. The problem is this: Dead deer earn trophies from poetry contest judges. A ram in the thicket is to the prophets as a dead deer to poetry contest judges. Few tear up over gutsy displays from squirrels or rabbits or blackbirds. Poetry contest judges defer to the heads of big game and mark their scorecards with crocodile tears. But here's the thing. You and poetry contest judges do not see the megalodons or sauropods or elephant birds trading human remains next to Denny's. You and poetry contest judges confuse animal parts left and right of the I-90 for a one-trick pony and mistake a long game for a stall walk. Too few poetry contest judges are cutters, folk that read wounds with fingerprint recognition or trade blood for saliva like mosquito carriers of glass bits of ancient fire. These poetry contest judges toss goat prizes while logging onto Netflix and tucking in a burrito throw. So you haul the carcass into the bramble and check the damage to your front grill. You might have become woke at this moment, St. Paul fallen from his horse and gorging on chunks of steaming venison. Or you might have invited law enforcement, but you've got no stomach for oxymoron. Or you might have sat in your truck and rued the fall backward into standard time, but you choose your own piss, end stop punctuation between the murder scene and the one witness you've already ghosted on social media. Truth is a fastball and everybody strikes out on curves and knucklers in the multiverse of REM. Most don't even get to swing. They're brushed back by purpose pitches like flyovers and anthems. You pass out in the cab of your truck and you remember how you never forced yourself on that girl. Dreams are dogwood whittled Y-shaped to find water. How you entered her as a train, the eye of a needle, but you felt and knew different once you gave a name to that pseudonymous actor studying the arts of penetration and representation at the knee of Stanislavski. You called yourself victim, and that makeup you saw in the mirror made you a faux bro of the Joker. This is the real reason you fell in love with method acting. Hell, you'd share poppers with Joaquin Phoenix if it meant your ass and clemency were all one-way traffic. When you wake from memory, you have a real light bulb moment that puts the lie to those who call you dim-witted. Before you tuck in Bambito in the cargo bed, you rescue your Remington Sendero from the back seat, approach that 9/11 carcass in the bramble, and discharge 130 caliber round into the high shoulder and another into the heart, because Yankee Doodles are dandy when reading from the same page of a high capacity magazine. And those behind you in the drive-through at Burger King see nothing untoward. Judas, come home, all is forgiven. The problem is this: the guy at the window with your nuggets, soda, and apple turnover is a poetry contest judge who puts the same price on eulogy and factory farmed meat, because chickens and fools wear coxcombs through tragedy and comedy alike. But here's the thing: poetry contest judges will choose the warm embrace of the serpent rather than wrestle with God, because they're only interested in the kind of homeschooled carrion that eschews truth for whoppers. No one is hopping like a monkey into the back of your cab with a stone knife and appetite for organ grinding. Psychopaths covet the screaming of the lambs. The rest of us fear what Santa knows. And what could be more apple pie and stars and stripes and cluster bomb than a man carving a kill in his garage in the middle of the night? You finish dressing the deer by popping out the anus and pulling out the colon, but you make a hash of the actual decapitation. Slit the throat, soil the cape, and blow your medal score with a short nose cut. And then things get unsavory. The floodlight goes out like a white dwarf, and you and your denims are ass deep in carbon detonation and blood and darkness. And by the time your eyes adjust, they are no longer your eyes, but those of your kill, UV hot and virtually no blind spot. And that carcass that you just gutted and beheaded has morphed into that girl that you didn't force yourself onto because of that Faustian deal you made with Joaquin Phoenix to seal the record. And you recoiled in horror only long enough to gather up all that Baconator and quarter-pound king and toss it into an oil drum with barbecue lighter fluid and a strike anywhere match. But here's the thing. You've ignited really the worst case scenario because poetry contest judges love to self-immolate vicariously and reappear in the imaginations of those with EMG detectors or smudge pots of failed taxidermy. Your best move is to extinguish that funeral pyre of guts and eyeball and antler crown and swallow the charred remains of that girl before some bug-eyed prophet batting cleanup in the multiverse starts whacking fastballs out of the Milky Way and well beyond the outstretched deer-hide gloves of poetry contest judges. Thank you. My next reading is a poem called Diary of a Dead Eel Boy. At the wane of day, my father and I would strike out small in tall rush and long shadow, greasy wellies and waders, orange and blue, through Clwyck, and a wick and a wick. My father and I would navigate fruiting bodies, upright catkins and egg-shaped leaves, down to bat song air at crag point of dark, and the one twisted ash and succulent grasses. Split the green curtain he did with his club-fingered hand, and bid me break my slipping gait with the sober refrain, care is the order, while hopping goat-like scree and rock chimney. At river edge, we left good altitude, leaned one the other on sharp degrees waterward, and entered the lair of the eel, down to the killing stone mucked with bone, gut, and gill. Dark now darker on the face of father's eyes, flint knives for sacrifice and organ dissection, he ran silence through nocturnal notes and brackish molecules, blood spores in the nose. Spillers he'd take and drive the stakes like a loony railman, laying bed and ties into the sea. Gather line and hook underfoot and stab a worm fat way short to make show of the ends. Out went the line and sinker, straight points aft of entry, and father and I bent crooked obtuse, and tautness in the hands that were the sign of a true lay or untold fears coal lorry black. Behind him I stumbled, hammering spare stakes, tossing hooks and smelling and hearing blind, and always the glop of water and kiek of little owls, and the dank of sulfur, salt, and nettle. Through sand and heron shit, we skittered, palm reading nylon and slack for hunger and urge, shoring up spillers and skirting carbon rust of hippo tusk and macaque jaw and dung beetle. And then he bade me do that thing that was holy of holies and life for life, and seed for seed. But come the shot, recoil, and treadless boots, come the slip, fall, and lumber shock at sedge bar, and bubbling hoe, and breathless he, and gasp, and pee, and neck, and ice, and skin, and smart, and entropy, and amber trilobite, and salt shad, and mud fart, and snot jelly, and black hole. And father cursing the weight of the boy, and sinkers of melted lead, and iron pipe, and always the hook, and the mouth, and the boy's leg for anchor, and bloody minutes cut into his hands, until the earth gave way at the bottom of the world to the mud golem, and the O-mouthed oily thing wrapped long at his leg, and father looking fire-eyed and hell-bent at eel and eel boy, and stomping spineless and clubbing paste-wise the jaw, eyes, and tooth plates in its ugly face, and returning next day with the sober refrain, care is the order, and spillers, worms, and hooks. Thank you. My next poem is called Sycademic. Once again, sick in parentheses spelled S-I-C, Sycademic. I take my black skin out for a walk. I dress it in all-weather livery. I collar and muzzle and leash. I bid my black skin do tricks for passers-by. I command my black skin to beg and roll over and to bark silently and crawl. I train my black skin to play dead at the end of finger pistols or threat of the cage. I discipline my black skin when it stares into the eyes of onlookers, or when it snarls, howls, shows its teeth, or stands on two legs. I manage the triggers of my black skin's resistance. I withdraw my affection and use the word no, or I kettle and kennel with cordon and baton. I reward pea greets, grinning and licking with praise and treats and liberal petting. I take shit every day from my black skin as a matter of civic and paternal duty. And I let my black skin exercise its freedom within the chain link fence of black skin parks and beneath the watchful eye of black skin owners, until one day bleeds into another, and for the Juneteenth time, my black skin presents its collar and muzzle and leash and unconditional love. Sycademic. Thank you. This next poem is my latest, just recently completed, and it's called The Emancipation. Brother and I cud and mush, spit and chew, and gulp bitters of aniseed, clove, and crack babash. And he costume jab molasses for devil mass, and fork, biscuit drum, and o-mear for breastplate. And brother give me data hair and stinking tot-tots and poom-poom to clear Maljo to Congo. And he fill me out Dame Lorraine pillows and Jumbie umbrella and whisper, pay the devil his due. Salt foot in ox shit, we stamp stinging Woolwich and stunt ratoon in the burn of cane and snake, and still the kakaraka of chachalaka and harank of blood guara and shriek of screamer. Through kudzu vine we crawl to the redwood of broke throat bone, and brother eat the gut spill of the dead ocelot, with fly chatter and slug snot in the nose and head cap bird scat of Chitico cow. Round, oh my God, brother dose more crack babash, and he drill queso and camboulet and sing Sita eat the mango, and we make coffle line through master house and pea floors, Mother Sally. At 20 water line, brother leap red howler to the shoulders of Moko Zambi, and they stomp leg holes through the roof of boiling and curing house and crush bourgeois slavers and bagasse. And then come the thump thump at auction square of tambour bamboo and scream of papayo, and brothers sing pole fights with boom or foulet or cutter, and egg bow bongo dance of Jagabat sluts. But we mud faces and run hell way when Kashikas obey us say, not all teeth smile. And we 30 of thousands flee the dogs at Fever River and the old French list and cutlass and whip and stick. And brother and I skirt Fer-de-Lance flatheads and duppy unborn before I fall deep water down at Orinoco and Spirit Swamp and count N days in the cage and drown of white mangrove root. And my data hair knots with sister of Senegal heads from the door of no return, and I see Dame Lorraine in the O'Mear say, pay the devil his due, and brothers jab fork, jab me, and set blood free. Thank you. This next poem is called The Prophecies of Beatrice, Canto 101, The Virus, from the Apocrypha of Dante Alighieri. Byzantine were the caverns and the air thin, and progress for the pilgrim and her guide none, when Galilei threw light on monster and kin. And horrible was the beast's simulacrum, 39 times counted I, corona I, novel agents of pig, rat, fowl, and kraken. And Galilei whispered hoarse, the end is nigh. Unyoked cross and compass from his girdled waist, and left fireflies of spiral nuclei. And she who had spoken silent spring post haste led me deeper to catacombs wet and rank, and bade me see things unholy and unchaste. Camel leg and dog, kangaroo and cat flank, and monkey and peacock parts in ample slew, and at each stop the cries of each my heart sank. And came I ancient medicinal to rue, and pitied I the beasts their hung cage and hook, and saw I gene and cell and gnome and flew. And the prophetess lifted her burning book, premonitions and admonitions unheard, and lit the way by measured meters once took. Whereupon the poet showed me beast and bird, loved among one, the other and all like mind, and I drank fully of his grace and his word. And from the cave I flew freely and bat blind, the poet's terza rima like mammal flight, each note echolocation for humankind. And we at rock's edge found both abyss and light, and one the others to steady leap and grounds, an antidote in what was good, meet, and right. Thank you. This next selection is called Diary of the Immortal Jelly Girl. At first gush of blood, Mama and I broke out hot in the cold light of blue mountain flies. Through wing flick and leg comb, we cut foot and crown in pear paddle and burr thorn. Mama and I aired hours short of practice through bone bruise, lung burn, and possum grunt, and read whereabouts through gleep and bee and timble rattle and Katie did, Katie didn't. Down tall man grass we split banana smell and hop and the jammy of fungus and curry bush. And I fell wide of lead over rue bones at Shaman's Creek and cursed fire sticks and lizard hunts. Jaw grind come bog marsh, we filled toes with leeches at the swollen remains of fever tree, and called out halloo and laid smoking piss to signal our own claim and shadow. Raise the stones, Mama did at Bubble Snail, moss and mud for welly bits and shells for tits, and she bid me spit and bloody the totem at spirit level and breathe being into the O at face plate. And come the screech of the sooty owl, Mama and I shed kits of dressing, sack, panty, and rag, and cut joints with the day at ankle and hip and knee, and burst gum glands for weed dance. And Mama mixed stock of fir eucalypt and wort milk, and made antidote for unborn skin, and she whispered invite to the 90 white feelers, and twisted Medusa tails in my hair. At the sands of Golem, we drank spores of seagrass, snake nursery, and foul pink bellies of dead pilots, and fell to fours in the tracks of leatherbacks, pulling clear of burial and egg bed at sea's edge. And Mama's unbroken pearls of rune in uncovered moon were celebration of unconquered sisters, the words of scars no one hears when you wake screaming for opposable thumbs and kerosene. And fell we like fallow stones in 5 billion years toward the lair of tentacle, bell, and stinging cell, and shrink and sink and eyeless seeing and blind gut and glory hole and ah and oh and immortal jelly. Thank you. My last selection is actually the last poem I've written. I was mistaken earlier. This is my latest poem, and it's called The Mask of God. It is not so much they as we who people the death pit, the tomb, the mound, and the room. How much does a child's heart weigh? Enough to bloody the scales between obey and disobey. It is what those who sacrifice do, make an ember of their heart to be burned ex officio. I fill my sack with the souls of babes, and we in flame molt the lie between skin and milky eye. At least the Gordian knot of sin and atonement found its mystery boon in a forward-looking Janus, or a pot of perfume petals and spices in a shithouse of asses. Even so, double-stranded DNA produce in me the crushing cosmic force of papa-sized opposable thumbs. And how can I be other than the pre-Christmas consonants of a sheepherder? Neither I, nor rain, nor desert god is changeling for nursery. There is no recourse really, but to don the mask to look away from myself as a black hole, gray ersatz. The children give me example in peas and shells and handy dandy. I will also faint and choose the O, a closed circle of falsities, no less hermetic than the serpent with tail in its mouth. All the better to leave the children in their beds with sugar plums all a dance in their heads, and the god of Gog and Magog a lapdog. In my teeth I clench the pearly bit and secure the fit. I wear the mask of humankind. Oh, I wear the mask. Thank you. That concludes my reading for this evening. I hope you enjoyed it. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Dean. Up next is Pieter Lefferts. Artist Pieter Lefferts is known for his award-winning oil and pastel paintings, especially of New York's Adirondack Mountains. It is there that the artist also began to expand on his own journal writing during his painting excursions to delve into the fictional and mythical accounting of the world encompassing him. After undergraduate studies in studio art and art history at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, Pieter studied classical academic art techniques under Hilary H. Holmes at the Art Studio League of New York. His recent landscape work was juried into the Pastel Society of America's prestigious Enduring Brilliance exhibition at the National Arts Club in New York City. Tonight, Pieter introduces his debut novel, With the Kek Kek Saw, an animist fable he describes as an adventure story steeped in love and hope for the world. Itself a labor of love 10 years in the making, What the Kek Kek Saw was published in January of 2022 by UnCollected Press to growing acclaim. Print paperbacks are available at the publisher's website, and I'll put that in the bio or in the chat for everybody, at therawartreview.com and major book retailers online. For more of Pieter's writings, visit the Writers Forum at the Heart of the Healer Shamanic Mystery School website. To follow the adventures of Paco Piet, a 6-episode chronicle of the author's ceremonial wilderness pilgrimage in communion with the mountain deities and their celestial guides. He is also a contributor to an upcoming book on shamanism to be released by Sacred Stories Publishing later this year. To learn more about Pieter and his catalog, including works in progress, visit his Instagram and www.pieterlefferts.com. Without further ado, Pieter.
Good evening, everybody. And thank you for the introduction, Rajan and Joel. Thank you for hosting. Dean, that was quite marvelous and potent work there. And it's a delight to be with you this evening. So I will be reading from What the Kek Kek Saw, chapters 1 and 2 this evening. And I would like to just proceed for those who have read the book or are about to. You may wonder who the book is dedicated to. She was my pet raccoon when I was about 12 years old, over 50 years ago, something probably not possible today. She returned to the wild. She was not caged, and she would sleep on my pillow. And it has left me with a lifelong impression. To her, I dedicate this book. For Wheezy, with your hematite eyes, a glisten beneath the summer moon, your nose but a breath from mine, you opened me to the world of the wild and free, and to the magic at the heart of things. You taught me how to be. Chapter 1. Long, slender limbs of sugar maple flew by at a clip as Odie Semper wove his path through the forest. Summertime, there's nothing like it. Air's got a punch, heat and humidity, good lift, cool, warm, the changes feel good. Good to be alive. The owl beat his wings once before disappearing into the mosaic of leaves. He picked out a birch limb and set his talons into its bark. What a glorious day. Just glorious, isn't it, Birch? With the recent rains, everything's lush and green. Been plenty of sunshine too, of course. Feels great right to the tip of my tail. Odie reset his feathers. Look at this forest spread out before us, rising up the slopes of the Barakan peaks. All of it come back since the clearing. The birch tree creaked as it swayed upon the rising wind. Odie rode the changes, motionless. They've seen it all, haven't they, Birch? The old ones. They've been around since I don't know when. They even survived the big ice. When it was winter and only winter for a long, long time. Ice was so thick, it covered them, smothered them, and ground them down, made them into who they are today. So goes the story. Can you imagine it? Birch, how that must have been, how they must have looked. Berea, before the big ice. Fly forward from then to now, and that's a lot of changes. The trees swayed with the morning breeze. Odie resumed his survey of the forest, a mix of hardwoods filling the glades with evergreens, seeming to defy the odds as they rose from creases within rock walls or tacked themselves into the forest web from atop boulders. Odie Semper drew in a fresh breath. Since the clearing, Berea is a thriving, full-fledged forest again. We haven't messed with the two-legged in a long time, and they haven't messed with us either. Our world has come back to how it should be. The owl rolled his shoulders, twisted himself, and straightened his head, his eyes scanning the woods. The birch's branches rose and fell on the breezes, fresh in the wake of the most recent thunderstorm. Odie reset his talons and resumed his conversation. But think about them, these mountains, the biggest things in our world, and yet they don't always come out on top. That's what I'm saying. Shows you things in a bigger way. Does for me anyway. Maybe for you too? Anyway, I'm off. Got work to do. Places to be, woods to watch. Stay well, old friend. Always good to be with you. Odie dropped from the limb and took to wing, flying from the birch grove through a mix of spruce and balsam fir. Been raining lots, spilling down like moose juice over the ledges. Guess it's good for the ponds and bogs. The woods in general, keeps fire away anyway. That's good. Here we go. Time to get to it. Back to work. Good morning, and how's my favorite spruce today? What a rain this morning, eh? Odie locked his talons into the lichen encrusting the branch of the spruce towering over the junction of several common footpaths used by a host of passersby. Always shelter from the storm. I'm grateful to see you for that, old spruce. You're good at holding ground. Odie eased his grip. Always good sight lines too, especially at this time of year. Thank you for that. The owl scanned the woods. Well, now, you don't say. Folks have been through here already this morning. Let's have a look. Odie stretched his feathers a moment before resetting his wings. The bird focused on nothing in particular. Time to watch. Watch the woods. Watch the woods. Watch these woods. For what? I don't know, but I'm sure going to find out. But first, I need to know who. It's the better question. Better than what? Without a doubt, it's better than why. Because when you know who, everything else falls into place, lines up like you'd expect, like the twirl of bristles on a cone, which makes it easier to understand why. Because that's the last thing you're going to find out anyway. Otherwise, it crows at you. Caw, caw, caw. Doesn't let up either, does it? It pecks and it pecks. What you need to know, what you want to know is, whoo, Odie Semper called out. Something about this place right now just doesn't feel right. Something's up. Changes, not just coming. They're here. Came in fast too. These woods have had their share of troublemakers. Always have, probably always will. I know that better than anybody. I find them out. Opportunists mostly, looking for the easy mouse. Don't get me wrong, we're plenty good in Berea, but there's always those few Why they do what they do, I do not know. One is all it takes. Might never know, probably not. But I know who they are. Even if I've never seen them before, I can pick them out. Not necessarily troublemakers, but game changers. Don't bother with the why until you know the who of it. Odie stretches wings and reset his feathers. Things were drying out. He refreshed his stance upon the branch. Yeah, well, I'm careful though. I don't get caught up in bug brain beliefs. Pellet purge, if you ask me. Noisy wings. Nope, I don't. Ha, it spins my head around just to think about what some people might do. Odie spun his head just shy of a full circle at the crack of a stick below him. His eyes, bottomless pools of black, scanned the woods. Hoo, 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 he called out from the spruce, its lichened shroud dripping from the pre-dawn cloudburst. Hoo, 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 hoo. First of all, there's Gessey. He's back, I'm sure of it. I saw him again just before thunder and rain set everyone ducking for cover. I know it was him. Tail up, nose to the ground, no mistaking it. It was him. But I lost track of him in the thick of it, and I'm just not sure where the old dog's headed. Makes my gizzard growl. Odie tightened his eyes in thought. Gessey, back in the wood. What's he up to this time? No, I can tell you. I'll tell you this, given the chance, that coyote will snatch up anybody. It's game over. Wha! In a flash, some nut plucker, lost in a reverie of beech nuts, or some mouse chaser, nose in a hole, is gone. Snatch. Odie fluttered, his eyes wide. Hoo, 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 hoo. I'll raise my pitch. Hoo. That'll cut through better. They'll hear that. Figure it out. We'll weave a web, an owl's web of vigilance. Something is up, that I can tell. Odie awaited his answer, perched in silence. The snap of another stick focused his attention upon a stag shouldering its slab frame through sprays of fern. Oroshirvi, he's back. Well, well, well. I'd forgotten about him. He's been gone so long, and now look, he's back. Suppose I'll keep an eye on him too, while I watch for that coyote. Looks like it's shaping up to be a busy day. Look at him. He's certainly no forkhorn anymore, is he? Got quite the rack. Impressive. Nobody's gonna mess with him. The buck's got muscles too. Even when he had spots, he talked about becoming a great stag someday. Looks like that day's come. All right then, welcome back, Oroshirvi. But I'm getting distracted. Deer aren't the troublemakers, not around here. I want to know where that coyote is. Odie watched the deer clear the brook in a leap. Oroshirvi began to eat as he stepped from the shadows into bright, warm sunshine. His ears twitched as they probed the breezes eddying about the clearing. Swaying grasses shed rainbow droplets. A spider's jeweled web scattered sunlight between balsams. The buck let loose a brisk snort, its chin outstretched as it purged the coyote's scent from its nose. Odie stood up at attention, scanning the woods in all directions. That coyote's been through here twice already today, since before the storm, and now he's come through a third time, and just a blink ago. How'd I miss him? Must have been I was fixing my feathers. Odie turned his head near round to see. A few wing beats away, Gessey, heading north, trotting lightly up the footpath that had been used by land walkers for countless seasons. He's headed to the esker. If he keeps heading that way, he'll end up at Great Pine. Of all people, what would a coyote want from her? Mama Furrow. And look at him strut all tall and proud, tail flitting like a butterfly. A shiver released out Odie's tail. He's up to something. I know he is. You know, it's not good. And you know as well as I do, he's not strutting around here alone. Not Gessey. I've never liked him, never trusted him. He gets into other people's business. Takes pleasure in it too, those fools. But that's their folly, not mine. Idiots. Odie wanted to hiss, but restrained himself. So who else is passing this way? Hoo, 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 hoo. Distant replies, broken hoots muffled by the tangle of forest, were enough for Odie Semper to know his calls were being heard. Chapter 2. There, that ought to do it. A few more sticks and some mud across that spot, and we'll see water come higher still on the lodge. Ha, that'll be nice. I got another side channel closed too. Been a good day already. A good day, if I say so myself. Ben slipped into the pond and swam to the thicket he'd been working on since before sunrise. You know, I've been studying this. Flow, mechanics, arrangements, interconnecting details. It's simple to see, given the storm cycle. We plug it up over there. Those two spots should be easy enough. And we let the runoff spill there. It can go deep if need be. We can handle that. So the first thing is to get that section tied into the other dams. When I get this dam joined with the other dams and we make a single dam, well, we could dam up this whole valley once and for all. That would be nice, eh? Wouldn't it? Ben kept at work, soaked in thought. Sunshine glistened on the fur of his back as he gnawed away, unaware of Letty, her summer coat blazing red, watching him as she trotted the shoreline trail. Good morning, Ben, she called out. The beaver let loose a walloping smack into the still surface of the pond. A relay of ripples scattered as Ben submerged into the depths. His alder sprig harvest floated hapless at the middle of the pool. I didn't mean to scare him again. You gotta love that beaver, whispered the fox as she loped her routine path. He's got one of the most important jobs around here, the keeper of the waters. She accentuated the title before turning into the forest. Everybody needs him. If you don't get that, you become standing deadwood, a weathered ghost, lifeless in the pond until one day you finally topple into the muck. Not a pretty way to go, but he is so ridiculously shy. Startles so easily, happens every time. I guess he just gets so caught up in his work. I know my wolf cousins depend on his kind to raise their pups. Sure they do, but look at me. Do I look like I could be like a wolf? And her ramble got snapped short by a dragonfly whizzing past her nose. The near collision caused her to pay fresh attention to her surroundings. She stopped and stood still. Expect the unexpected, she said aloud. She squinted as she sniffed the rising breeze. Her ears darted left and right, forward and back, grabbing bits of information hanging on the air. That's right, expect the unexpected. That right there is the essence of the way of the woods. It's my way anyway. She picked up her trot again. I think I'll head up to the high ground, see what's doing at Great Pine. After the rain, there should be plenty of tasty littles gathering cones. Letty licked her chops. I'll take my time though. Work the underbrush. I'll know where the little ones like to nap. Besides, I'm not hungry right now. I'll plan to get to Mama Furu tomorrow when shadows are long. The fox skirted the edge of the swamp and disappeared into the woods. Odie listened to the replies to his calls. Far-off hoots cutting through the understory. They assured him that word had spread throughout the woods. Gessey was around and about, last seen headed north up the Esker. The forest had its own reply. A blue jay called to her clan. Branches swayed on the rising wind. The random buzz of bees and flies, all of it caught Odie's attention. Little escaped his notice. Odie eyed the mudflat. His eyes lit up at the discovery of another set of tracks also headed north, but they took a turn to west. They were rain-washed, hard to read, made not long before Gessey had passed through. The owl tightened his focus. Fresh mud never lies. Got all the news I need to see about who's been through and where they're headed. But these are a little, let's have a look. Odie shrieked out, Aramook, heading to the setting sun. It's Aramook, he's at it again. Aramook is heading to town. Hoo-ah, hoo-hoo, Aramook, heading to town. Odie leaned forward and spread his wings. He swooped low to the ground before arcing his way up to the canopy. He crossed over the bog to land upon a branch midway up the trunk of a beech tree, its smooth bark riddled with holes, repeated at regular intervals up and down the trunk. Bear tree, said Odie. Odie, said Bear tree. I'm looking for Coley. I need to find him, said Odie, catching his breath. The tree listened with eternal patience. Tracks, raccoon tracks, headed north, great pine, but turn to the setting sun. Bear tree, the trail to town is that way, under the setting sun. I fear Aramook is headed to town. If he is, there'll be trouble for us all. What is it with Aramook and the two-legged? I mean, why does he keep at it? He's tried this before. It was a disaster, Bear tree. I just saw Aramook's tracks back there on the trail. I never thought he'd be so nut-brained as to do it again. What's gonna happen? Bear tree, I need to find Coley. Wind rustled through the beach. Yes, I understand. Coley Bear is to the south. He is not far. Bear tree answered Odie in a cadence of few words, a gradual drawl, born of years providing guardianship to bear cubs sent to safety up the tree by their mother, their young claws scoring permanent marks in the beech's pale bark. Coley himself has often dug his claws deep into the tree when restaking his territory. Bear tree bends to these demands with the quiet resolve of a hardwood graced with sapling resilience to prevail over nature's most ardent forces. Some say that lightning will not touch Bear tree, nor his kind. If you leave now, you will be upon him like a wind. Coley Bear is with the kek-kek. He is in story circle. Bear tree spoke no more. Odie thanked Bear tree. He left a downy feather and fell away from the branch, letting the breeze fill his wings, sending him aloft once again. Kek-kek, 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 kek-kek. That's how you sound to the rest of us when you're at your gathering, little ones. Us, we who are not of your kind. To the rest of us, you and your stories, it's meaningless chatter to our ears. Your cluck, croak, and ribbit, hopeless for us to understand. So then, why try? Why should we attempt to speak amphibian? So we call you by how we hear you, kek-kek. It's easier that way, for us that is. Every summer, you, your kind, gather in the shallows to call out your stories. Stories of heroic journeys and grand adventures. Stories, kek-kek, of bravery. Stories of things gone right and stories of things gone wrong. All of this is ahead for you. For the gathering, dear ones, marks the triumphant return from the journey that every kek-kek will undertake. Coley adjusted himself. More on that in a moment. I'm sure you'll have questions. The kek-kek fidgeted upon the spruce duff. The sitting bear towered over his diminutive audience. But first, I'm going to tell you a story. Odie flew silent between the cool drink of shadow and the shafts of steaming yellow sunlight. Carving through the changes felt good on the tips of his wings. Coley's tracks weren't hard to find. I know where he's headed. I should have guessed. The black spruce grove deep in the swamp. Might be his favorite, depends. But on a day like this, hot and steamy, of course, mosquitoes for the kek, perfect. Coley ignores him. With his coats, those buggers don't stand a chance. He's in no hurry, that's plain to see. He had time to snack. Blueberries sure are plenty this year, but I've got to get to Coley Bear as soon as I can. We've got to stop that raccoon. Thank you. So I have completed the reading portion of my story, my time with you. I will comment that as a painter, having spent the majority of my life going to the Adirondacks in a place that is actually off the grid and in what is now the largest wilderness, second largest wilderness tract east of the Mississippi River after the Everglades. And there I have been graced with the opportunity to immerse myself into deep nature. And over time, this story began to emerge, these characters. I began to relate to them as other than the two-legged. And I took my time to write and to write and to weave this story together until it really became to be in ways that still surprise me, actually. I found that through words, I could convey something about nature and our connectedness with nature that I've felt could be brought to life through story. And so it is, after many revisions and, as I say, a labor of love to create, I feel like I am a messenger through this story, their story. Ultimately, it's a story about love and hope for the world. In creating this environment that I immersed myself in, and using animals as characters, creating a fable, I knew I wanted it to be of a realism, although there's magic in the story, but of a realism, of a real kind of natural world where it is a world of predator and prey. And my animals, my characters, they are who they are as animals. They are not living in little houses below the ground, you know. It's just, that was important to me in creating this, to make it the real deal in that sense when an author uses animals for a character. I think ultimately, it was also important to me to be with them and to source from them. I found myself creating at times thinking, what an odd story to be telling. And yet it wanted to be told. And I made a practice of staying away from a lot of pop culture, movies that may have had an ecological theme like Avatar. I have still not seen. I just wanted to not bring in other influences such as that. So in addition to listening to the animals, being a painter as well, I embraced some of my influences since I was a child. N.C. Wyeth, for instance, and I discovered as a young kid, and his images, his illustrations for The Last of the Mohicans, for instance, fueled my imagination, going to the Adirondacks, going to camp, as we call it. And camp is far from civilization, about 10 miles back, and yet it's got all the creature comforts. So it is a rare opportunity to be in an environment in the natural world without the distractions of electronica and not even cars, and just the silence of the forest. And that, I think, has been the most precious gift in setting me up to write this story. I certainly thought about other influences, such as The Wizard of Oz, with its magic and enchantment. And in fact, and The Wind in the Willows, of course, would be another enchanting tale. As I wrote, and as I felt I was receiving information from the source, nature herself, I expressed things that I wasn't even sure about, I suppose. And I had wanted at some point to, I felt like I wanted some sort of validation, verification of what I was talking about. And now this is 10 years ago, and now I find there's lots of publications about the mycelial web, the connectedness of nature and of all life. And I think that that is a key important element for me. And you may have heard me refer the animals, Odie referred to people. Well, I think an important aspect of the story is this notion of personhood, that all beings have a sentience and a right to personhood. And within that is the ebb and flow and ever seeking a balance. So I think with that, I will leave it there. Rajan?
I think I'll finish it up.
Okay.
But I appreciate it so much, Pierre. if you can turn off your camera and your microphone, but thank you so much. That was a wonderful reading, Dean and Peter. Once again, this is the Bone Music virtual reading series. We don't have a schedule, but I'm hoping to do about 5 or 6 readings a year. Many of them will be affiliated with UnCollected Press, so you'll be seeing their authors often, but we're not exclusively working with UnCollected. We will be having many authors. We recently had Rajan, in fact, reading along with Tawanda Malalu and my son Darius Adifat Peckham, and we'll have many others in the future. And thank you so much for being here and paying attention and listening to these great words. Thank you again, Dean and Peter and Rajan, and signing off from the side of a hill back in the woods by Four Pole Creek in Huntington, West Virginia. This is Joel Peckham and the Bone Music Virtual Reading Series.